Hello. All right. Hello and welcome back. This week back to doing random readings. Got here uh Irish Fairy and Folk Tales, W.B. Yeats, and well, just today I got here drinking with here. What I'm drinking is some guava nectar. Run out of guava nectar. Got a thing of water. Got ice. Got water guava nectar. I've got raspberry lemonade, which will be interesting. All of it with ice. It's a bit warm where I am. Uh, sorry. Hello and welcome back, travelers. Gonna be reading to you today, picking up where we left off. Oh, dear me, where did we leave off? It's been 2 weeks. Yeah, the practice session was definitely needed. I was able to make quite the enjoyable show by going through that. Trooping Fairies, Frank Martin and the Fairies, we did that one. The Priest's Supper, we did that one. The Fairy Well of Laganene, I think so. And if you're hearing machines go off, I got the freaking washer and dryer are going off and the dehumidifier because it gets humid in here. I reckon feels like I'm having dinner with Shrek on most days, but uh, yes, we did do the very well of Laganay. So this week, me starting things off with Tig O'Kane and the Corpse. Uh, literally translated from Irish by Douglas Hyde. Uh, there's a little asterisk here that says none of Mr. Hyde's stories given here have been published before. They will be printed in the original Irish and his forthcoming Le Bard. I am not even going to try and twist my tongue around that. In Gill, Dublin. So it looks like it was given to Yeats before it was officially published in the guy's own works. Uh, in here in brackets, it looks like there's a brackets here. There's how would I put this? There's a forward here in brackets. I found it I found it hard to place Mr. Douglas Hyde's magnificent story amongst the ghosts or the fairies. It is amongst the fairies on the grounds that all these ghosts and bodies were in no manner ghosts and bodies, but fishgo, uh, fairy spells. One often hears of these visions in Ireland. I have met a man who had lived a wild life like a man in the story, till a vision came to him in County Redacted. Uh, one dark night in no way so terrible a vision as this, but sufficient to change his whole character. He will not go out at night. If you speak to him suddenly, he trembles. He has grown timid and strange. He went to the bishop and was sprinkled with holy water. It may have come as a warning, said the bishop, yet great theologians are of opinion that no man has ever saw an apparition, for no man would survive it. Ed. I guess the bishop was called Ed. At least that's, I think, how it's. I think that is how it is portrayed here in the reference. Not sure how clearly you can see that. Just get some water. Or, wait, no, guava. There once. Oh, there was one. Freaking need to do more vocal warm-ups before getting started on this. I keep on tripping over my own tongue. There was once a grown-up lad in the county Leitrim, and he was strong and lively, and the son of a rich farmer. His father had plenty of money, and he did not spare it on the son. Accordingly, when the boy grew up, he liked sport better than work, and as his father had no other children, he loved this one so much that he allowed him to do everything just as it pleased him. He was very extravagant, and he used to scatter the gold money as another person would scatter the white. He was seldom to be found at home, but if there was a fair or a race or a gathering within 10 miles of him, you were dead certain to find him there. I know like 3 guys who were like that. And he seldom spent the night in his father's house, but he used to be always out rambling. And like Sean Bray long ago, there was. I've got here a quote in Irish, and I am just absolutely awful. I've been meaning to learn like 10 years now. I've always been putting it off. But Graglek, Callan, Marboro Lane. And I have butchered that horribly. If I ever do this better, I'm gonna pull up a phonetic spelling so that I can get it right. The love of every girl in the breast of his shirt, and many the kiss he got and gave, for he was very handsome, and there wasn't a girl in the country but would fall in love with him, only for him to fasten his 2 eyes on her, and it was for that someone made his ran on him. Okay, so it looks. Blue and Roger que ran por ne more. It's such a beautiful language, and I am making it sound absolutely awful. I'm just gonna go to the English translation. I really should. I need to do better with this. Look at the rogue. It's for kisses he's rambling. It isn't much a wonder, for that was his way. He's like an old hedgehog. At night he'll be scrambling from this place to that, but he'll sleep in the day. At last he became very wild and unruly. He wasn't to be seen day nor night by his father's house, but always rambling on his Calais night visit, from place to place and from house to house, so that the old people used to shake their heads and say to one another, "It's easy seen what will happen to the land when the old man dies. His son will run through it in a year, and it won't stand him that long itself." He used to be always gambling and card playing and drinking, but his father never minded his bad habits and never punished him. But it happened one day that the old man was told that his son had ruined the chamber of a girl in the neighborhood, and he was greatly angry. And he called the son to him, and said to him, quietly and sensibly, "Avec," says he, "you know I loved you greatly up to this, and I never stopped you from doing your choice thing, whatever it was. And I kept plenty of money with you, and I always hoped to leave you the house and land. But all I had after myself would be gone. But I heard a story of you today that has disgusted me with you. I cannot tell you the grief I felt when I heard such a thing of you. And I tell you now, plainly, that unless you marry that girl, I'll leave the house and land and everything to my brother's son. And he never could leave it to anyone who would make such a bad use of it as you do yourself, deceiving women and coaxing girls. Settle with yourself now whether you marry that girl or and get my lands as a fortune with her, or refuse to marry her and give up all that was coming to you, and tell me in the morning which of the two things you have chosen." "Oh, Domino Sherry, father, you wouldn't say that to me, and I such a good son as I am. Who told you I wouldn't marry the girl?" says he. But his father was gone, and the lad knew well enough that he would keep his word too, and he was greatly troubled in his mind, for as quiet and as kind as the father was, he never went back of a word, and that he had once said. And there wasn't another man in the country who was harder to bend than he was. The boy did not know rightly what to do. He was in love with the girl indeed, and had hoped to marry her some time or another, but he would much sooner have remained another while as he was, to follow on at his old tricks, drinking, sporting, and playing cards. And along with that, he was angry that his father should not order him to marry, and should threaten him if he did not do it. Isn't my father a great fool? Says he to himself. I was ready enough, and only too anxious to marry. And now, seeing he threatened me, faith, I've a great mind to let it go another while. His mind was so much excited that he remained between again Thomas just done. I have There's a reason why I see stories because like I've you know, I've met guys who are like this. They're not really worth much. He walked out into the night. At last, too cool. mm, He walked out into the night, at last to cool his heated blood, and went on to the road. He lit a pipe, and as the night was fine, he walked and walked on, until the quick pace made him begin to forget his trouble. The night was bright, and the moon was full. There was not a breath of wind blowing, and the air was calm and mild. He walked on for nearly 3 hours, when he suddenly remembered that it was late in the night and the time for him to turn. Musa, I think I forgot myself, says he. It must be near 12 o'clock now. The word was hardly out of his mouth when he heard a sound of many voices and the trampling of feet on the road before him. I don't know who can be out so late at night as this, and on such a lonely road, said he to himself. He stood listening, and he heard the voices of many people talking through other. But he could not understand what they were saying. Oh, Rira, says he, I'm afraid it's not Irish or English they have. It can't be. It can't be. They're Frenchmen. He went on a couple yards further, and he saw well enough by the light of the moon and a band of little people coming towards him, and they were carrying something big and heavy with them. Oh, murderer, says he to himself. Sure, it can't be that they're the good people that's in it. Every rip of hair that was on his head stood up, and there fell shaking on his bones, for he saw that they were coming to him fast. He looked at them again, and perceived that there were about 20 little men in it, and there was not a man at all of them higher than about 3 feet, or 3 feet and a half. And some of them were gray and seemed very old. He looked again, but he could not make out what was the heavy thing they were carrying, until they came up to him. And then they all stood around about him. They threw the heavy thing down the road, and he saw on the road. Crap, I lost where my was. On the road, and he saw on the spot that it was a dead body. He became as cold as death, and there was not a drop of blood running in his veins. When the little gray menin came up to him and said, Isn't it lucky we meet you, Teig O'Kane? Poor Teig could not bring out a word at all, nor upon his lips, if he were to get the word for it. He also gave no answer. Teig O'Kane, said the little grey man again. Isn't it timely you met us? Teig could not answer him. Teig O'Kane, says he, the third time. Isn't it luckily and timely that we met you? But Teig remained silent, for he was afraid to return an answer, and his tongue was as if it was tied to the roof of his mouth. The little grey man turned to his companions, and there was joy in his bright little eye. And now, says he, Teig O'Kane hasn't a word. We can do with him what we please. Teig, Teig, says he, you're living a bad life, and we can make a slave of you now, and you cannot withstand us. There's no use in trying to go against us. Lift that corpse! Teig was so frightened that he was only able to utter the two words, I won't. For as frightened as he was obstinate and stiff, the same as ever. Teig O'Kane won't lift the corpse, said the menon, and the wicked little laugh, for all the world like the breaking of a lock of dry kippens, and with a little harsh voice, like the striking of a cracked bell. Teig O'Kane won't lift the corpse. Make him lift it. And before the word was out of his mouth, they all gathered round poor Teig, and they were talking and laughing through each other. Teig tried to run from them, but they followed him, and a man of them stretched out his foot before him as he ran, so that Teig was thrown in a heap on the road. There, before he could rise up, the fairies caught him, some by the hands, some by the feet. They held him tight in a way that he could not stir, with his face amongst the ground. 6 or 7 of them raised the body, then pulled it over to him, and lifted it down on his back. The breast of the corpse was squeezed tight against Teig's back and shoulders, and the arms of the corpse were thrown around Teig's neck, and they stood back from him a couple of yards, and let him get up. He rose, foaming at the mouth, and cursing, and he shook himself, thinking to throw the corpse off his back. But his fear and his wonder, they were great when he found that the 2 arms had a tight hold around his own neck, and that 2 legs were squeezing his hips firmly, and that however strongly he tried, he could not throw it off, any more than a horse could throw off its saddle. He was terribly frightened then, and he thought he was lost. "A con forever," said he to himself. "It's the bad life I'm leading that has given the good people this power over me. I promise to God and Mary, Peter, and Paul, Patrick, and Bridget that I'll mend my ways for as long as I have to live if I come clear out of this danger, and I'll marry the girl." The little grey men came up to him again and said to him, "Now, Tregrin," said he, "you didn't lift the body when I told you to lift it, and see how you were made to lift it. Perhaps when I tell you to bury it, you won't bury it until you're made to bury it." Anything at all I can do for your honor, said Teig. I'll do it, for he was getting sense already, and if it had not been for the great fear that was on him, he would never he never would have let that civil word slip of his mouth. The little man laughed a short laugh again. You're getting quiet now, Teig, said he. I'll go bail, but you'll be quiet enough before I'm done with you. Listen to me now, Teig O'Keen, and if you don't obey me in all I'm telling you to do, you'll repent it. You must carry with you this corpse that is on your back to Temple Demas, and you must bring it to the church with you, and you must make a grave for it in the very middle of the church, and you must raise up the flags and put them down again in the very same way, and you must carry the clay out of the church and leave the place as it was when you came, so that no one could know that there had been anything changed. But that's not all. Maybe that the body won't be allowed to be buried in that church. Perhaps some other man has the bed, and if so, it's likely he won't share it with this one. If you won't get leave to bury it in Temple Demas, you must carry it to Carrick Vic Oris and bury it in a Carrick Fad Vicoris and bury it in the churchyard there. And if you don't get it into that place, take it with you to Temple Rowan. And if that churchyard is close to you, take it to Imlog Fada. And if you're not able to bury it there, you've no more to do than take it to Kilbreda, and you can bury it there without hindrance. I cannot tell you what one of those churches is the one where you will have to bury that corpse under the clay, but I know that it will be allowed to you to bury him at some church or other of them. You do this work rightly, we will be thankful to you, and you will have no cause to grieve. But if you are slow or lazy, believe me, we shall take satisfaction of you. When the grey little man had done speaking, his comrades laughed and clapped their hands. Click, click, hee, 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 they cried. Go on, you have 8 hours before you till daybreak, and if you haven't this man buried before sun rises, you're lost. They struck a fist and a foot behind on him, and drove him on in the road. He was obliged to walk, and to walk fast, for they gave him no rest. I wonder how many of these churches you'll actually have to visit. Modern accessibility says rules of 3, but based on old fairy tales, you'll probably have to visit every single one of them. He thought himself that there was not a wet path or dirty boreen, or a crooked country road in the whole country that he had not walked at that night. The night was at times very dark, and whenever there would come a cloud across the moon, he could see nothing, and then he used often to fail. Sometimes he was hurt, and sometimes he escaped, but he was obliged always to rise on the moment and to carry on. Sometimes the moon would break out clearly, and then he would look behind him and see the little people following at his back, and he heard them speak amongst themselves, talking and crying out and screaming like a flock of seagulls. And if he was to save his soul, he never understood as much as one word of what they were saying. He did not know how far he had walked, when at last one of them cried out to him, "Stop here!" He stood, and they all gathered round him. "Do you see those withered trees over there?" the old boy to him again. "Temple Demas is amongst those trees. You must go in there by yourself, for we cannot follow or go with you. We must remain here. Go on boldly." Teig looked from him, and he saw a high wall that was in places half broken down, and an old gray church on the inside of the wall, and about a dozen withered old trees scattered here and there around it. There was neither leaf nor twig on any of them, but their bare crooked branches were stretched out like the arms of an angry man when he threatens. He had no help for it, but was obliged to go forward. He was a couple of 100 yards from the church, but he walked on and never looked behind him until he came to the gate of the churchyard. The old gate was thrown down, and he had no difficulty in entering. He turned then to see if any of the little people were following him, but there came a cloud over the moon, and the night became so dark that he could see nothing. He went into the churchyard, and he walked up the old greasy pathway leading to the church. When he reached the door, he found it locked. The door was large and strong, and he did not know what to do. At last he drew out his knife with difficulty and struck it in the wood, if it were not rotten. At last he drew out his knife with difficulty and struck it in the wood to try if it were not rotten, but it was not.
Basically, if the wood was rotten, he could have just gone straight through the door with very little ease. I could one time I was freaking helping repaint a porch, so I was taking all the flaky paint off of it with a scraper, and I came across some rotted wood, and the scraper just freaking dug most of it out. So it's very easy to get through rotted wood. That's what's going on there. But it wasn't rotted. The door was not rotted.
"Now," said he to himself, "I have no more to do. The door is shut, and I can't open it." Before the words were rightly shaped in his own mind, a voice in his ear said to him, "Search for the key on the top of the door or on the wall." He startled. "Who is that speaking to me?" he cried, turning around. but he saw no one. The voice said in his ear again,
"Search for the key on top of the door or on the wall."
"What's that?" said he, and the sweat running from his forehead. "Who spoke to me?"
"It's I, the corpse, that spoke to you,"
said the voice. "Can you talk?" asked Teig.
"Now and again,"
said the corpse. Teig searched for the key and found it on the top of the wall. He was too much frightened to say any more, but he opened the door wide and as quickly as he could, and he went in with the corpse on his back, and it was dark as pitch inside, and poor Teig began to shake and tremble.
"Light the candle," said the corpse.
Teig put out his hand in his pocket, as well as he was able, and drew out a flint and steel, and struck a spark out with it, and lit a burnt rag he had in his pocket. He blew it until it made a flame, and he looked around him. The church was very ancient, and part of the wall was broken down. The windows were blown in or cracked, and the timber of the seats was rotten. There were 6 or 7 old iron candlesticks left there still, and in one of these candlesticks Teig found the stump of an old candle, and he lit it. He was still looking around him on the strange and horrid place in which he found himself, when the old cold corpse whispered in his ear,
"Bury me now, bury me now. There's a spade and a turn the ground."
Teig looked from him, and he saw a spade lying beside the altar. He took it up and placed the blade under the flag, which was in the middle of the aisle, leaning all... flag is in flagstone, I think. And leaning all his weight on the handle of the spade, he raised it. Very difficult to do. And the others near it. And he moved 3 or 4 of them out of their place. The clay was under the clay that was under them was soft and easy to dig, but had not thrown up more than 3 or 4 shovelfuls, when he felt the iron touch of something soft like flesh. He threw up 3 or 4 more shovelfuls around it, and he saw that there was another body that was buried in the same place.
"I'm afraid I'll never be allowed to bury the 2 bodies in the same..."
No. Wrong voice. "I am afraid I'll never be allowed to bury the 2 bodies in the same hole," said Teig, in his own mind. "You corpse there on my back," says he, "will you be satisfied if I bury you down here?" But the corpse never answered him a word. "That's a good sign," said Teig to himself. "Maybe he's getting quiet." And he thrust the spade down in the earth again. Perhaps he hurt the flesh of another body, for the dead man that was buried there stood up in the grave and shouted in an awful shout, "Hoo, hoo, hoo! Go, 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 or you're a dead man!" And then he fell back in the grave again. Teig said afterwards that all the Teig said afterwards that of all the wonderful things he saw that night, that was the most awful to him. His hair stood upright on his head like the bristles of a pig. There was a cold sweat ran off his face, and then came a tremor over all his bones, until he thought that he might fall. But after a while, he became bolder. When he saw the second corpse remain lying quietly there, he threw in the clay on it again, and he smoothed it overhead. He laid down the flagstones carefully, as had been before. It can't be that he'll raise up any more, he said. He went down the aisle a little further, and drew near to the door. He began raising the flags again, looking for another bed for the corpse on his back. He took up 3 or 4 flagstones and put them aside. He took up 3 or 4 flags and put them aside, and then dug the clay. He was not long digging until he laid bare an old woman without a thread upon her but her shirt. She was more lively than the first corpse, for he had scarcely taken any of the clay from her, when she sat up and began to cry, "Oh, you balak!" Clown. Bodak. Clown. Ha! You Bodak. Here has... Where has he been that he's got no bed? Poor Teig drew back, and when she found that she was getting no answer, she closed her eyes gently and lost her vigor, and fell back quietly and slowly under the clay. Teig did to her what he had done to the man. He threw the clay back on her and left the flags down overhead. He began digging again near the door, but before he had thrown up more than a couple shovelfuls, he noticed a man's hand laid bare by the spade. "By my soul, I'll go no further then," said he to himself. "What use is it for me?" He threw the clay on again and settled the flags as they had been before. He left the church then, and his heart was heavy enough, but he shut the door and locked it, and left the key where he found it. He sat down on a tombstone that was near the door, and began thinking. He was in great doubt what he should do. He laid his face between his 2 hands, and cried for grief and fatigue, since he was a dead certain that at this time that he never would come home alive. He made another attempt to loosen the hands of the corpse that were squeezed round his neck, but they were as tight as if they were clamped, and the more he tried to loosen, the tighter they squeezed him. He was going to sit down once more when the cold, horrid lips of the dead man said to him, "Carec fa victoris," and he remembered the command the good people to bring the corpse with him to that place, if he should be unable to bury it where he had been. He rose up and looked about him. "I don't know the way," he said. He soon he soon as he... Okay, I guess that's a typo. Written here, it says, he soon as he uttered the word, but, grammatically speaking, at least according to modern linguistics, the thing would be as soon as he uttered the word. But, yeah. He soon as he had uttered the word, the corpse stretched out suddenly, its left hand that had been tightened round his neck, and kept pointing out, showing him the road he ought to follow. Teig went in the direction that the fingers were stretched, and passed out of the churchyard. He found himself on an old, rusty, stony road, and he stood still again, not knowing where to turn. The corpse stretched out its bony hand a second time, and pointed out to him another road, not the road by which he had come when approaching the old church. Teig followed that road, and whenever he came to a path or road meeting, the corpse always stretched out his hand and pointed with its fingers, showing him the way he was to take. Hello, dog. If you want me to scratch you behind the ears, you gotta come over here. Let's see. Where was I? I lost my spot. Teig went in the direction that the fingers were stretched and passed. No, that couldn't be where I was. Right. It kept pointing out, showing him the road he ought to follow. Teig went in the direction that the fingers were stretched, and passed out of the churchyard. He found himself on an old, ruddy, stony road, and he stood still again, not knowing where to turn. The corpse stretched out its bony hand a second time, and pointed out to him another road, not the road by which he had come when approaching the old church. Teig followed that road, and whenever he came to a path or road meeting, the corpse always stretched out its hand, and pointed with its fingers, showing him the way he was to take. Many was the cross road he turned down, and many was the crooked boreen he walked, until he saw from him an old burying ground at last, beside the road, but there was neither church nor chapel, nor any other building in it. The corpse squeezed tightly, and he stood. The corpse squeezed him tightly, and he stood. Bury me in the burying ground, said the voice. Teig drew over towards the old burying place, and he was not more than about 20 yards from it when, raising his eyes, he saw hundreds and hundreds of ghosts, men, women, and children, sitting on top of the wall, round about, or standing on the inside of it, or running backwards and forwards and pointing at him, while he could see their mouths opening and shutting as if they were speaking, though he heard no word nor any sound amongst them all. He was frightened to go forward, so he stood where he was, and the moment he stood, all the ghosts became quiet and ceased moving. When Teig understood that it was trying to keep him from going in, that they were, he walked a couple yards towards, and immediately the whole crowd rushed together toward the spot which he was moving. They stood so thickly that seemed to him that he never could break through them, even though he had a mind to try. But he had no mind to try it. He went back to the broken and dispirited, and when he had gone a couple hundred yards from the burying ground, he stood again, for he did not know what way he was to go. He heard the voice of the corpse in his ear, saying, Temple Rowan. And the skinny hand was stretched out again, pointing him out the road. As tired as he was, he had to walk, and the road was neither short nor even. The night was darker than ever, and it was difficult to make his way. Many was the toss he got, many a bruise they had left on his body. At last he saw Temple Rowan from him in the distance, standing in the middle of the burying ground. He moved over towards it, and thought he was all right and safe, when he saw no ghosts, no anything else on the wall, and he thought he would never be hindered now from leaving his load off him at last. He moved over to the gate, but as he was passing in, he tripped on the threshold. Before he could recover himself, something that he could not see seized him by the neck, by the hands, and by the feet, and bruised him, and shook him, and choked him, until he was nearly dead. And at last he was lifted up, carried more than 100 yards from that place, and then thrown down in an old dike, with the corpse still clinging to him. He rose up, bruised and sore, but feared to go near the place again, for he had seen nothing the time he was thrown down and carried away. You corpse upon my back, said he. Shall I go over again to the churchyard? But the corpse never answered him. That's a sign you don't wish me to try it again, said Teig. He was now in great doubt as to what he ought to do, when the corpse spoke in his ear and said, Imbolg fada. Oh, murder, said Teig. Must I bring you there? If you keep me along walking like this, I'll tell you I'll fall under you. He went on, however, in the direction the corpse pointed out to him. He could not have told himself how long he had been going when the dead man behind him suddenly squeezed him and said, "There!" Teig looked from him, and he saw a little low wall that was so broken down in places that it was no wall at all. It was in a great wide field, in from the road, and only for 3 or 4 great stones at the corners. That was more like rocks than stones. There was nothing to show that there was either graveyard or burying ground there. Is this Imolgfada? Shall I bury you here? Said Teig. Yes, said the voice. But I see no grave or gravestone, only a pile of stones, said Teig. The corpse did not answer, but it stretched out its long, fleshless hand to show Teig the direction in which he was to go. Teig went on accordingly, but he was greatly terrified, for he remembered that what happened to him at the last place. He went on, with his heart in his mouth. He had said himself afterward, as he said himself afterwards, but when he came within 15 or 20 yards of the little low square wall, there broke out a flash of lightning, bright yellow and red with blue streaks in it, and went round the wall in one course, and it swept by as fast as the swallow in the clouds. And the longer Teig remained looking at it, the faster it went, until at last it became like a bright ring of flame round the old graveyard, which no one could pass without being burnt by it. Teig never saw from the time he was born, and never saw afterwards, so wonderful or splendid a sight as that was. Round went the flame, white and yellow and blue sparks leaping out from it as it went, although at first it had been no more than a thin, narrow line, it increasing slowly until it was at last a great broad band, and it was continually getting broader and higher, and throwing out more brilliant sparks, till it was never a color on the ridge of the earth that was not seen in that fire. Lightning never shone, and flame never flickered, that was so shining and so bright as that. Freaking colors unknown to the likes of man. Teig was amazed. He was half dead with fatigue, and he had no courage left to approach the wall. There fell a mist over his eyes, and there came a choran in his head, and he was obliged to sit down upon a great stone to recover himself. He could see nothing but the light, and he could hear nothing but the whir of it as it shot round the paddock, faster, and a flash of lightning.
Sorry, just needed a second. My eyes are getting tired.
As he sat there on the stone, the voice whispered once more in his ear, "Kill Breda." And the dead man squeezed him so tightly that he cried out. He rose again, sick, tired, and trembling, and he went forwards as he was directed. The wind was cold and the road was bad, and the load upon his back was heavy. And then and the night was dark, and he himself was nearly worn out. And if he had to and if he had had another typo, they have had in here twice. And if he had had very much farther to go, he must have fallen dead under his burden. Is this just a thing with my copy, or is that just a normal typo that made it past the editors? At last the corpse stretched out his hand and said to him, "Bury me there." "This is the last burying place?" said Teig in his own mind. And the little gray man said I'd be allowed to bury him in some of them. So it must be this. It can't be but they'd let me in here. The first faint streak of the ring of day was appearing in the east, and the clouds were beginning to catch fire. But it was darker than ever, for the moon was set, and there were no stars. Make haste," said the corpse. And Teig hurried forward as well as he could to the graveyard, which was a little place on a bare hill, with only a few graves in it. He walked boldly in through the open gate, and nothing touched him, nor did he either hear or see anything. He came to the middle of the ground, and then stood up and looked round him for a spade or a shovel to make a grave. As he was turning round and searching, he suddenly perceived what startled him greatly: a newly dug grave right before him. He moved over it, looked down, and at the bottom he saw a black coffin. He clambered down into the hole, lifted the lid, and found that, as he thought it would be, the coffin was empty. He had hardly mounted up and out the hole, and was standing on the brink, when the corpse, which had clung to him
for more than 8 hours, suddenly relaxed its hold on his neck, loosened its shins from round his hips, and sank down with a plop into the coffin. Teig fell down to his 2 knees at the brink of the grave and gave thanks to God. He made no delay then, but pressed down the coffin lid in its place, and threw in the clay over it with his 2 hands. And when the grave was filled up, he stamped and leaped on it with his feet until it was firm and hard. And then he left the place. The sun was fast rising as he finished his work, and the first thing he did was return to the road, look out for a house to rest himself in. He found an inn at last, lay down upon a bed there, and slept till night. Then he rose again, ate a little, fell asleep again till morning. Then he awoke in the morning. He hired a horse and rode home. He was more than 26 miles from home, where he was, and he had come all that way with a dead body in his back in one night. All the people of his own home thought that he must have left the country, and they rejoiced greatly when they saw him come back. Everyone began asking where he had been, and he would not tell anyone except his father. He was a changed man from that day. He never drank too much. He never lost his money over card, and especially he would not take the world and be out late by himself of a dark night. He was not a fortnight at home until he married Mary, the girl he had been in love with, and it was their wedding the sport was, and he was a happy man from that day forward. And it's all I wish, that we may be as happy as he was. Glossary here. It says here there's like a slight glossary. Ron, a stanza. Kaylee, a visit in the evening. Vera, oh Mary, an explanation. An exclamation like the French dame. Rib, a single hair in Irish. Ribe, rib. Lock, a lock. A bundle or wisp or little share of anything. Kippen, a rod or twig. Borin, a lane, specifically a poorly maintained lane. Bodak, a clown. Soran, vertigo. Avik, my son, or rather, O son. Mick is vocative of Mac. What did I do with my thing? Alright, hang on. Just need to... Okay. Stretch! Knuckles. Just need to rest my eyes for a second. I'm just gonna take the vocals down a bit and go top off my ice. And then I'll get back with
about that. Turns out a few chores need my attention. And I am back on the page. So this one's Paddy Corcoran's wife, as provided by William Carlton. Paddy Corcoran's wife was for several years afflicted with a kind of complaint which nobody could properly understand. She was sick, and when she was not sick, she was well, and she was not well. The ladies, she was as ladies wish to be who love their lords. She was not as such ladies wish to be. In fact, nobody could tell what the matter was with her. Sorry, it reminded me of a song. Cod liver oil, Doctor, oh dear Dr. John, your cod liver oil is so pure and so strong. I'm afraid of my life, I'll go down the soil. My wife, don't stop drinking your cod liver oil. What is it? Crap, I can't remember how the rest of it goes. But basically what happens is the wife was, I'm a young married man and I'm tired of life. For 7 years I was married to a pale, sickly life. She's nothing to do, only grumble and cry, and praying to God she would die. Oh doctor, oh dear Dr. John, your cod liver oil is so pure and so strong. I'm afraid of my life, I'll go down in the soil. My wife, don't stop drinking your cod liver oil. I bought her a bottle only to dry. The way you think she drank it, you think she would die. Well, then she got stout, and then she got strong. I can't remember the rest of it. I have to look up the lyrics. But basically, she starts off pale and sickly. He buys her a bottle of cod liver oil just to try it. Then she gets stout and strong, and now I guess after that she's the one who's wearing the pants in the situation, so it's a turnabout type of thing. But she's down and down in those bottles. I should probably start over from the beginning because I got on the whole cod liver oil frame. I should look at the chord progression of that song. Right. Paddy Corcoran's wife. Paddy Corcoran's wife was for several years afflicted with a kind of complaint which nobody could properly understand. She was sick, and when she was not sick, she was well, and she was not well. She was as ladies wish to be who love their lords, and she was not as such ladies wish to be. In fact, nobody could tell what the matter with her was. She had a gnawing at the heart which came heavily upon her husband. For with the help of God,
a keener appetite than was the same gnawing amounted could not be met with of a summer's day. The poor woman was delicate beyond belief, and had no appetite at all, and she hadn't the bearing a little relish for a mutton chop or a shank, or a bit o' mat. Any anyway, for sure, God help her. She hadn't the least inclination for the three hert or the drop of sour buttermilk along with it, especially as she was so poorly, and indeed for a woman in her condition, for sick as she was, poor Paddy always was made to believe her in that condition. But God's will be done, she didn't care. A, a, a patty and a grain of salt was a welcome to her. Glory be to his name. As the best roast and boiled as ever was dressed, and why not? There was one comfort, she wouldn't be long with him, long troubling him. It mattered little what she got, but sure she knew herself that from the gnawing at her heart she could never do good without a little bit of mat now and then. And sure, if her own husband uh, beggared it to her, who else had she a better right to expect? Well, as we have said, she lay a bedridden invalid for long enough, trying doctors and quacks of all sorts. All sorts. Sorry, I gotta start that sentence over from the beginning because. Well, as we have said, she lay bedridden invalid for long enough, trying doctors and quacks of all sorts, sexes, and sizes, and without a farthing's benefit, until at long run poor Paddy was nearly brought to the last pass in striving to keep her in the bit o' mat. The 7th year now on the point of closing, when one harvest day as she lay bemoaning her hard condition on her bed beyond the kitchen fire, a little Weasley woman dressed in a neat red cloak comes in and sitting down by the hearth says, "Well, Kitty Corcoran, you've had a long lair of it there on the broad of your back for 7 years, and you're just as far from being cured as ever." "Marvone, aye," says the other, in the throne of what I was in minute thinking of, and I've sorrowful thought it's who is me." "It's your own fault, then," says the little woman, "and indeed for that it's your own fault if you ever were there at all." How is that?" asked Kitty. "Sure, I wouldn't be here if I could help it. Do you think it's a comfort or pleasure to me to be sick and bedridden? No, says the other, I do not. But I'll tell you the truth. For the last 7 years, you've been annoying us. I'm the, I'm one of the good people, and as I have regard for you, I've come to let you know the reason why you've been sick as long as you are. For all the time you've been ill, if you'd taken the trouble to remember your your children throughout your dirty water after dusk and before sunrise, and every time we're passing your door, which we pass twice a day, and if you avoid this, if you throw it out in a different place and a different time, the complaint you'll have will leave you, so you will so will the gnawing at your heart. And you'll be as well as you ever were. If you don't follow this advice, why, remain as you are, and all art a man can't cure them. She then bid her good-bye and disappeared. Kitty, who was glad to be cured on such easy terms, immediately complied, and the injunction of the fairy, and the consequence was that the next day she found herself in as good a health as she ever enjoyed in life. Sorry, it's like, listen, you fool girl, I'll tell you why you're sick. You keep on throwing your dirty dishwater on us. Like, to parse it off as to modern language. The lady was sick because she was throwing out dirty water at the wrong spot at the wrong time every day. It's funny. What when they're entering that chamber pot? That's why you gotta dispose of your dirty water in a responsible fashion, or you'll get cursed by the fairies. Well, disposing your water in a safe manner is, don't want to contaminate the groundwater and such, but it's a good look. Phone's in my pocket. I'm going to look up the lyrics so I can sing for you, Dear Dr. John. It is a funny song. All right, hang on. Okay. I'm a young married man and I'm tired of my life. For lately I've been married to an ailing young wife. She has nothing to do, only sit down and cry, and saying and wishing to God she would die. Oh doctor, oh dear Dr. John, your cod liver oil is so pure and so strong. I'm afraid of my life, I'll go down in the soil if I don't stop.
My wife, don't stop drinking your cod liver oil. Hang on, I think I got the wrong lyrics here. I wanted the Great Big Sea version of the lyrics. Oh, yeah. So, cod liver oil, it's been around for a while, so there are a few different versions of the lyrics out there. I'm just the most familiar with the Great Big Sea version of the lyrics. I'm a young married man and I'm tired of life. For 10 years I've been wed to a pale, sickly wife. She has nothing to do, only sit there and cry, and praying to God she would die. A friend came, a friend of my own came to see me one day. He told me my wife, she was pining away. And afterwards he told me that she would get strong if I got her a butter from dear Dr. John. Oh doctor, oh dear Dr. John, your cod liver oil is so pure and so strong. I'm afraid of my life, I'll go down in the soil if my wife don't stop drinking your cod liver oil. I bought her a bottle, well, just for to try. And the way that she drank it, you'd think she might die. I bought her another, it vanished the same. And then she got cod liver oil on the brain. I bought her another, she drank it, no doubt. And then she began to get terrible stout. And when she got stout, well, of course she got strong. And I became jealous of dear Dr. John. Oh doctor, oh dear Dr. John, your cod liver oil is so pure and so strong. I'm afraid of my life, I'll go down in the soil if your wife don't stop drinking your cod liver oil. Me house it resembles a great doctor's shop. It's covered with bottles from bottom to top. It's early in the morning, the kettle does boil, and you'd swear it was singing of cod liver oil. Oh doctor, oh dear Dr. John, your cod liver oil, so pure and so strong. I'm afraid of my life, I'll go down in the soil if me wife don't stop drinking your cod liver oil. Oh doctor, oh dear Dr. John, your cod liver oil is so pure and so strong. I'm afraid of my life, I'll go down in the soil if me wife don't stop drinking your cod liver oil. But yeah, so that story reminded me of that song to the point where I just freaking. If things remind me of songs, I have a tendency of starting to sing. Thank you, I give me a look whenever I stop, huh? Huh? Camera, look, eh? Camera. Ah, look at the camera. Ah, camera. Ah, look at the camera. Eh? Eh? Oh, great. Of course. She gives me the look as soon as I pull the camera away. Where was I? Okay, there we go.
So, translated from the Irish by J.J. Callanan. 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 Callanan.
Alana.
Translated from Irish by J.J. Callanan. And of course, we have an introduction in brackets here. This song is supposed to have been sung by a young bride who was forcibly detained in one of those forts which are so common in Ireland, and to which the good people are very fond of very fond of resorting. Under pretense of hushing her child to rest, she retired to the outside margins of the fort and addressed the burthen B-U-R-T-H burthen of her song to a young woman who she saw at a short distance and whom she requested to inform her husband of her condition and to desire him to bring the steel knife to dissolve the enchantment. Of course. I wonder if there's a melody that is. I wonder if there's a melody that is supposed to go with this. I want to at least try. Oh, there is. Okay, that's not what I thought it was. All right, I think that's good enough to get a consensus of what it's supposed to sound like. I'm gonna have to start from the beginning.
Apparently, this one's a bit more of a bit more famous than I thought it was. But Cusheen Loo, translated from Irish by J.J. Uh, Callan. Uh, Callanan. This song is supposed to have been sung by a young bride who was forcibly detained in one of those forts which are so common in Ireland, and to which the good people are so very fond of resorting. Under under pretense of hushing her child to rest, she retired to the outside margins of the fort and addressed the burthen of her song to a young woman who she saw at a short distance, and whom she requested to inform her husband of her condition, and to desire him to bring the steel knife to dissolve the enchantment. Sleep, my child, for the rustling trees, stirred by the breath of summer's breeze, fairy songs of sweetest note, gently round. Ah, crap. Frickin'. Gotta start again. Sleep, my child, for the rustling trees, stirred by the breath of summer breeze, fair and fairy songs of sweetest note around us gently float. Sleep, for the weeping flowers have shed the fragrant tears upon thy head. The voice of love hath soothed thy rest, and thy pillows is thy mother's breast. Sleep, my child, weary hast weary hath passed time forlorn, since your mansions I was born. Thou bright feast its airy halls, and your voice of mirth resounds from its walls. Sleep, my child, oh many maids unblooming bright, within a splendid dome abide, and many's a hour and shriveled sage, and many's a matron bound with age. Sleep, my child, O thou, uh, thou who hearest the song of fear, to mourners home these tidings bear. Bid him bring the knife of the magic's blade, and whose lightning flash the charm will pay. Sleep, my child. Haste, for tomorrow sun will see the hateful spell renewed for me, nor can I from that home depart, till life shall leave my withered heart. Sleep, my child, sleep, my child, the rustling trees, stirred by the breath of summer breeze, and fairy songs of sweetest note around us gently float.
Oh, if I were ever to record this again, I'd have to do a lot more research to try and figure out what melodies is the general consensus is supposed to go with the song. Otherwise, you just gotta kind of wing it. At least from the context given in the book, like you just gotta wing it. Uh, what time is it? Almost 2:30.
I can do one more. Uh, the White Trout, a legend of Cong. It says here by S. Lover. There was once, W-A-N-S, once, upon a time, long ago, a beautiful lady that lived in a castle on the Lake Bayant. And they say she was promised to a king's son, and they were to be married. When all of a sudden he was murdered. Murdered, I tell you. The Crathir, Lord help us, and thrown into the lake above. And so, of course, he couldn't keep his promise to the fair lady, and more's the pity. Well, the story goes that she went out of her mind because perhaps I should try doing this with my very bad impression of a bro. That'd probably make things easier to read. There was once upon a time, long ago, a beautiful lady that lived in a castle upon the Lake Bayant. And they say she was promised to a king's son, and there were to be married. And then all of a sudden he was murdered. The Cathia, Lord help us, had thrown into the lake above, and so of course he couldn't keep his promise to the fair lady, and more's the pity. Well, the story grows, she went out of her mind because of losing the king's son, for she was a tender-hearted, God help her, like the rest of us, and pined way after him, until at last no one about seen her, good or bad. And the story went that the fairies took her away. Well, sir, in course of time, the white trout, God bless it, was seen in the that same print, and sure people didn't know what to think of the creature, seeing as how a white trout was never heard of before nor since. And years upon years the trout was there, just where you seen it the blessed minute, longer than I can tell ye. Longer than I can tell ye truth. The print was memory of the oldest in the village. At last the people began to think it must be a fairy, for what else could it be? And no hurt nor harm was ever put on the white trout until some wicked sinners of soldiers came to these parts and laughed at all the people and gibed and jeered and thinking of the likes, and one of them in particular, bad luck to them, God forgive me for saying it, swore he would catch the trout and ate it for his dinner, the blackguard. Well, what could you think of the villainy of that soldier? Sure enough, he caught the trout, and away with him home, and puts it on the frying pan, and into it he pitches the puny little thing. The trout squealed all as one as the crater. And, my dear, you'd think the soldier that split his sides laughing, for he was a hardened villain. And when he thought one side was done, he turned it over to fry the other. And what do you think? But the devil tasted a bed, and it was all in all. And sure, the soldier thought it was queer that he could not be grilled, but, he says, I'll give it another turn and by, little thinking what was in store for him, the heathen. Well, when he thought that the side was done, he turns it again, and lo and behold, the little devil a taste more done that side nor the other. Bad luck to me, says the soldier, but that baits the word, says he. But I'll try ye again, my darned, says he, as cunning as ye think yourself. And so, as he turns it over and over, but not a sign of fire was on the purity trout. Well, says the desperate villain, for sure, only he was a desperate villain entirely, and might know he was doing a wrong thing, seeing as all his endeavors was no good. Well, says he, my jolly little trout, maybe you're tried enough, though you don't seem over well dressed, but ye may be better than you look, like a singed cat, and a tidbit after all, says he. And with that, he ups with his knife and fork to taste a piece of the trout. But, my jewel, the minute he puts his knife to the fish, there was a murderin' screech that you'd think the life I lave ya if he heard it. The way it jumps the trout out of the frying pan in the middle of the floor, and the spot where it fell, up is a lovely lady, the beautifulest creature the eyes had ever seen, dressed in white, and a band of gold in her hair, and a stream of blood running down her arm. Look where you cut me, you villain, says she, as she looked at her arm, and as she held out her arm to him. And, my dear, he thought the sight would leave his eyes. Couldn't you leave me cool and comfortable in the river where you snared me, and do not disturb me in my duty, says she. Well, he trembled like a dog in a wet sack, and at last he stammered out something and begging for his life, and asked her ladyship pardon, and he didn't know she was on duty, nor or he was too good a soldier to know better nor to meddle with her. I was on duty then, says the lady. I was watching for my true love that's coming by father to me, says she. And if he comes while I'm away, and I've missed him, I'll turn you into a pinkin, and I'll hunt you up and down forevermore while the grass grows and the water runs. Well, the soldier thought the life it'd leave him, and thoughts of him being turned into a pinkin, and begged for mercy, and with the lady, and with that, says the lady, renounce your evil courses, says she, you villain, or you'll spent it too late. Be a good man, for the further you go to your duty, there's a asterisk here. Regular. And now, says she, take me back and put me in the river again where you found me. Now, there's an asterisk here for more context. It says, the Irish peasant calls his attendance at the confectional going to his duty. Oh, okay.
So she's telling him to go to frickin' church. Go to church, you heathen. Is basically what she's saying.
Oh, my lady, says the soldier, how could I have the heart to drown a beautiful lady like you? But he couldn't say another word. The lady vanished, and there he saw a little trout on the ground. Well, he put it in a clean plate, and away he runs for the bar life, for fear her lover would come while she was away. And he ran, even until he came to the cave again, and threw the trout into the river. The minute he did, the weather was red as blood for a while by reason of the cut, I suppose, until the sham washed the stain away. And to this day, there's a little red mark on the trout side where it was cut. There's another asterisk. The the fish really has a red spot on its side. Well, sir, from that day out, the soldier had a tent, was an altered man, and reformed his ways, and went to his duty regular, and fasted 3 times a week, though it was never fish he took on fasting days, or either the right he got fish died never rest in his stomach, save in your presence. But anyhow, he was an altered man, and as I said before, in the course of time he left the army, and turned hermit at last. And they say he used to pray every morn for the soul of the white trout. There's a bit more context here. Like, these trout stories are common all over Ireland. Many holy wells are haunted by such blessed trout. There's a trout in the well on the border of Loch Gill, Sligo, and some parish persons once put one on a gridiron, and it carries the marks to this day. Long ago, the saint who sanctified the well put that trout in there. Nowadays, it's only visible to the pious who have done due penance. That was oh. I think that's enough for today. Anyway, what was it? Oh, right, gotta do an outro. Well, thank you for joining me again. Hopefully next week's will be better than last's, and I hope you all have a nice day. And
hopefully your travels bring you back this way. So long.